At last year's Norwalk Boat Show, something happened that marine dealers never wanted to see. A 15-second video clip of a boat leaving a dock in complete silence went viral, racking up tens of thousands of views in hours, sparking conversations in living rooms across America, and fundamentally changing how millions of people think about what boats should sound like. That silent departure wasn't just a novelty or a tech demo. It was the visible proof that a 100-year empire built on gasoline, oil changes, and endless maintenance has been broken, that the business model sustaining thousands of marine dealers is collapsing in real time, and that an entire industry is about to be transformed in ways that will destroy some companies while creating fortunes for others. By the end of this investigation, you'll understand exactly what technology made this moment possible, why marine dealers are genuinely panicking about their survival, how the economics of boat ownership are about to change completely, and most critically, what this means for anyone who owns a boat, works in the marine industry, or is considering buying in what might be the last generation of gasoline-powered recreational vessels. This isn't just about boats going electric. This is about the dismantling of a century-old profit model, the disruption of an industry that thought it was immune to the forces reshaping transportation, and the beginning of a transition that will be as significant for marine recreation as the shift from steam to internal combustion was 100 years ago. Stay with me, because what happened at that boat show is just the visible tip of a revolution that's been building for years, and the implications go far deeper than most people in or out of the industry understand. Let me take you back to understand what's being disrupted, because you can't appreciate the revolution without understanding what it's replacing. For over a century, the marine industry has operated on a business model so reliable, so profitable, so deeply embedded in the culture of boating that it seemed permanent. That model wasn't really about selling boats. It was about selling ongoing service, maintenance, and parts. When you bought a gasoline outboard, you weren't just buying an engine. You were entering into a long-term relationship with dealers and service centers that would maintain your engine season after season, year after year, for as long as you owned it. The economics of this model were beautiful for dealers. New boat sales generated margins of 8 to 12%, decent but not spectacular. The real money, the foundation of marine dealer profitability, came from what happened after the sale. Service and parts generated margins of 35 to 50%. In a typical dealership, half of the gross profit came not from selling boats, but from the service bays in the back, from the parts counter where owners came to buy filters and spark plugs and impellers. Winterization became a ritual in cold weather regions, an annual event that generated predictable revenue as boats were pulled from the water, engines were drained and fogged, systems were protected against freezing, storage added another revenue stream. Then spring came and boats needed de-winterization, fresh oil, new filters, inspection of systems that had sat idle for months. Throughout the season, engines needed regular maintenance, spark plugs wore out, carburetors needed adjustment, fuel systems needed cleaning, lower units needed oil changes, impellers needed replacement. Each of these maintenance tasks generated billable hours and parts sales, and they were necessary, not optional, if you wanted your engine to run reliably. Engine failures created even more revenue: diagnosis fees, repair labor, replacement parts, sometimes complete rebuilds or replacements. A major engine repair could cost thousands of dollars, and owners had little choice but to pay because the alternative was a non-functional boat. This service-driven model shaped everything about the marine industry. It dictated staffing. Every dealership needed certified mechanics, and the more the better. It influenced customer relationships. Owners developed long-term connections with service advisors who knew their boats and their maintenance histories. It determined facility design. Service bays were as important as showrooms, sometimes more so. And it created economic stability. New boat sales might fluctuate with the economy, but service revenue was consistent, predictable, the foundation that allowed dealers to weather downturn. For 100 years, this model worked perfectly. Gasoline outboards were complex mechanical systems that required constant attention, and the industry built its entire economic structure around that complexity. Any technology that eliminated or dramatically reduced the need for maintenance wasn't just a product improvement. It was an existential threat to the business model that sustained the entire industry. That's what makes electric outboards so dangerous for traditional dealers. They don't just compete with gasoline engines. They eliminate the service revenue that keeps dealers profitable. Now let me show you how we got to this moment, because electric outboards aren't new. They've existed for decades, but until recently they were toys, barely functional products that nobody except niche users took seriously. The early electric outboards from the 2000s and 2010s were underpowered, with only a few horsepower available. They had terrible range, sometimes just 2 or 3 miles before batteries died. They required hours to recharge. They were heavy and awkward. They couldn't handle current or wind. They were useless for anything except putting around calm lakes at low speeds. Dealers stocked a few units for specialty customers, people operating in waters where gasoline engines were banned or restricted, rental operations looking for quiet motors for beginners, fishing guides working in nature preserves where noise mattered. But these were marginal products, not threats to the core gasoline market. Manufacturers like Torqeedo and Minn Kota kept developing their technology, making incremental improvements, but mainstream buyers ignored them. The batteries of that era, heavy lead-acid or early lithium with limited capacity, were the fundamental constraint. You simply couldn't pack enough energy into a reasonable weight to match the range and convenience of gasoline. For dealers and mechanics, electric outboards were curiosities that generated almost no revenue. They required no maintenance. They had no parts to replace. They were essentially maintenance-free, which from a dealer's perspective made them worthless as ongoing profit generators. But they were also irrelevant because almost nobody bought them. The technology wasn't ready, and the market didn't exist. That all changed when battery technology made several critical breakthroughs simultaneously. Lithium-ion batteries, the same chemistry that revolutionized electric cars and power tools, reached a tipping point in energy density, cost, and reliability that made serious marine applications practical. Energy density increased to the point where you could pack enough power into a reasonable weight to deliver real performance. Costs declined by 80% over a decade, making electric outboards price competitive with gasoline equivalents. Reliability improved dramatically, with batteries capable of hundreds or thousands of charge cycles. And new form factors allowed modular, swappable battery packs that could be replaced in seconds. These advances didn't happen overnight. They accumulated gradually through the 2010s, each improvement making electric outboards slightly more practical. By 2020, the technology had reached a threshold where electric motors could compete with gasoline on performance, though most of the marine industry wasn't paying attention. They were focused on the pandemic boat buying boom, selling gasoline boats as fast as they could produce them, collecting record service revenue as new owners brought boats in for maintenance. They missed or dismissed the signals that electric was about to become viable for mainstream use. Then came the Norwalk Boat Show in 2024, and everything changed. The Norwalk Boat Show has been a fixture on the marine calendar for decades, a regional event attracting dealers, manufacturers, and boat enthusiasts from across New England. The 2024 show seemed like it would be another typical year. Dealers displayed their latest gasoline boats and engines. Manufacturers promoted incremental improvements to existing products. Attendees walked the docks looking at boats they'd seen variations of for years, but something was different. The electric outboard manufacturers, previously relegated to corners of the show with minimal traffic, were prominently positioned. Flux Marine, a Connecticut startup, had a major display featuring high-powered electric outboards running in demonstration tanks. Mercury, the dominant name in gasoline outboards for generations, was showing their new Avatar electric line. Other manufacturers had electric options prominently featured, and the crowds noticed. Demo tanks running electric outboards drew larger crowds than gasoline demos. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Gasoline outboards roared and vibrated, filling the air with exhaust fumes and noise that made conversation difficult. Electric outboards glided silently, the only sound the swirl of water, allowing normal conversation while running at full power. Families with children pressed close to the electric displays, kids asking questions, parents clearly interested in the quiet, clean operation. Test ride sign-ups favored electric heavily. Show organizers reported that over a third of demo requests were for electric boats, unprecedented in the show's history. The real viral moment came from that 15-second video. Someone filmed a Flux Marine electric outboard as a boat left the dock. The departure was silent, except for water sounds. No engine noise, no vibration, no smoke or smell, just smooth, quiet acceleration away from the dock. That video was posted to TikTok and within hours had tens of thousands of views. It spread to Instagram, to boating forums, to Facebook groups. By the end of the show weekend, it had become the defining image of the event, shared and commented on by people who hadn't attended and in many cases didn't own boats. The viral spread of that silent departure changed the conversation instantly. Electric outboards went from niche products that most boat owners ignored to something that millions of people had seen and were talking about. The comments on the video were revealing. Is this the future of boating? No smoke, no noise, no going back. I want one. The public reaction caught the marine industry off guard. They'd underestimated how appealing silence and clean operation would be to regular boaters, not just environmental enthusiasts. Show organizers reported engagement on social media posts featuring electric outboards spiked by over 250% compared to gasoline content. Dealers fielded calls from buyers who hadn't attended the show but had seen the videos and wanted to know about electric options. The viral moment created public validation for electric outboards in a way that years of gradual technical improvements hadn't achieved. Suddenly, electric wasn't just viable technically, it was cool. It was what people wanted. And dealers who'd been ignoring or dismissing electric technology realized they might have a serious problem. Now let me show you exactly what makes modern electric outboards so threatening to the traditional marine business model. Because understanding the technology is critical to understanding the disruption. Modern electric outboards like the Mercury Avatar or Flux Marine models deliver performance that matches or exceeds gasoline equivalents in the metrics that matter most to recreational boaters. Power delivery is instant. Electric motors produce full torque from 0 RPM, meaning when you push the throttle, the boat responds immediately with no lag, no waiting for the engine to build revs. This gives electric outboards better acceleration and more precise control, particularly valuable in tight quarters like marinas, where you need immediate response. The user experience is completely different. Gasoline engines are loud, typically operating at 85 to 95 decibels at full throttle, louder than city traffic. Electric outboards run at 50 to 60 decibels, quieter than normal conversation. The difference is dramatic. On a gasoline boat, you shout to communicate. On an electric boat, you talk normally, hear music clearly, listen to the water and wildlife around you. Vibration is eliminated. Gasoline engines shake and rattle. Electric motors spin smoothly with essentially no vibration transmitted to the boat. This reduces fatigue on long trips and makes the entire experience more pleasant. Smell and fumes disappear. No gasoline odor, no exhaust smell. No need to ventilate engine compartments or worry about carbon monoxide accumulation. Range and efficiency are now competitive for the use cases that represent probably 80% of recreational boating. The Mercury Avatar 7.5e offers real-world range from 5 to 34 miles on a single charge depending on speed. At cruising speeds, that covers a full day of typical recreational use. And here's the critical factor that changes everything for dealers. Electric outboards require essentially zero maintenance. No oil changes, no spark plugs, no carburetors to adjust. No fuel filters, no lower unit oil, no winterization, no spring tune-ups, nothing. The motor is sealed and maintenance-free. The only consumable is the battery, which lasts hundreds of charge cycles before capacity degrades meaningfully. For boat owners, this is fantastic. No more hauling the boat to the dealer every spring and fall. No more scheduling oil changes. No more surprise repairs when components fail. Just charge the battery and go boating. For dealers whose profits depend on service revenue, this is catastrophic. Every electric outboard sold eliminates a service customer, a recurring revenue stream that would have generated thousands of dollars per year for the life of the engine. Let me quantify exactly what dealers are losing, because the numbers explain why panic is setting in across the industry. A typical gasoline outboard owner spends approximately $2,000 to $4,000 annually on maintenance and service. This includes routine maintenance like oil changes, filter replacements, spark plugs, lower unit service, plus winterization and de-winterization in cold climates, plus occasional repairs for components that wear out or fail. Over a 10-year ownership period, that's $20,000 to $40,000 in service revenue per boat. When a dealer sells a gasoline outboard, they're not just making the initial sale margin, they're securing a decade of service revenue. When a dealer sells an electric outboard, they get the initial sale margin and nothing else. The owner never comes back except possibly to buy a replacement battery after years of use. Internal projections circulating among marine dealers show that if electric outboards capture just 25% of the market, service revenue would decline by 40% because the remaining 75% of gasoline boats can't generate enough service business to make up for the loss. And losing 40% of service revenue when service represents half of gross profit means losing 20% of total profitability, enough to push many dealers from profitable to unprofitable. The implications are brutal. Dealers would need to lay off mechanics, reducing service capacity, which then reduces their ability to service the remaining gasoline boats, creating a spiral. They'd lose the expertise and capability they've built over decades. They'd need to find alternative revenue sources to replace lost service income. But what could possibly generate those margins and that volume? Parts sales would decline proportionally. Accessories might help, but can't replace service revenue. Some dealers are desperately trying to pivot. They're investing in high-voltage certification for their mechanics, training them to work on electric systems and batteries. But this is expensive, typically $4,000 to $7,000 per technician, and once trained, there's not much work to do, because electric systems don't break and don't need regular service. Some dealers are trying to emphasize that they can still provide value through other services: installation of electronics and accessories, boat cleaning and detailing, storage and winterization of the boat even if the engine doesn't need winterization. But these are weaker revenue streams that can't replace what's being lost. Other dealers are simply hoping electric adoption stays slow enough that they can retire or exit the business before the collapse becomes complete. They're older owners who've run successful dealerships for decades, and they're looking at maybe 5 to 10 more years before retirement. If gasoline remains dominant for that period, they can exit successfully. But if electric accelerates faster than expected, they could see their business values collapse before they can sell. The panic among dealers is real because they can see what's coming but don't have good options to prevent it. They can't refuse to sell electric outboards because customers are demanding them, and dealers who don't offer what customers want will lose sales to competitors. But every electric sale accelerates their own obsolescence. They're trapped in a situation where their short-term incentive to maximize sales conflicts with their long-term need to preserve their service-based business model. Now let me address the environmental questions around electric outboards, because it's not all clean and simple despite the marketing. The batteries powering these motors depend on lithium, cobalt, and other materials that must be mined, often in environmentally sensitive areas and sometimes under questionable labor conditions. Lithium extraction in South America requires massive amounts of water in desert regions where water is already scarce. Cobalt mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo has documented issues with child labor and dangerous conditions. Even as manufacturers shift to lithium iron phosphate batteries that don't require cobalt, the environmental footprint of mining and processing these materials is significant. Battery recycling is improving, but far from perfect. Many lithium batteries still end up in landfills rather than being properly recycled. The infrastructure for collecting and processing end-of-life marine batteries doesn't exist at scale yet. Manufacturers talk about sustainability and circular economy, but the reality is that we're still in early stages of developing truly sustainable battery life cycles. The marine industry's rapid embrace of electric outboards has happened faster than the development of systems to responsibly handle the environmental impacts of battery production and disposal. That said, the use phase environmental benefits are undeniable. Zero emissions during operation means no air pollution, no water pollution from fuel and oil leaking into the marine environment, no contribution to smog or climate change from the boat itself. The quiet operation reduces noise pollution that affects marine life and human enjoyment of natural areas. For use in sensitive environments like lakes, rivers, and coastal waters, electric outboards are clearly superior to gasoline from an environmental perspective. The question is whether the upstream environmental costs of mining and manufacturing batteries and the downstream costs of disposal outweigh the use phase benefits. The answer probably depends on how the industry handles the supply chain and end-of-life issues. If manufacturers prioritize ethical sourcing, develop effective recycling programs, and continue improving battery chemistry to reduce rare material dependencies, electric outboards can be genuinely more environmentally friendly overall. If they don't, the environmental benefits become more questionable. Looking forward, where is this heading? The technology trajectory is clear. Electric outboards will continue improving in power, range, and affordability. Battery technology is still advancing rapidly. Energy density increases and cost reductions that enabled the current generation of electric outboards will continue, making even better products possible. Charging infrastructure is being developed. Marinas are installing charging stations. Home charging solutions are becoming more sophisticated. The practical barriers to electric adoption are being systematically addressed. Regulatory pressure is building. California and some European countries are considering or implementing restrictions on gasoline outboards, particularly two-stroke engines that are less efficient and more polluting. As electric becomes more viable, the political will to restrict gasoline strengthens. The cultural shift is happening faster than the technology in some ways. The viral video from Norwalk shows that the public is ready for silent, clean boating. The younger generation growing up with electric cars sees electric boats as natural and normal. The resistance to electric is primarily from older boaters attached to traditional engines, and that demographic will age out over the next decade or two. For the marine industry, the transition will be wrenching. Some dealers will adapt successfully, finding new business models based on selling and supporting electric boats. Others will fail, unable to replace lost service revenue and unwilling or unable to invest in the transformation their businesses require. Consolidation is likely. Smaller dealers, without resources to adapt, will be absorbed by larger operations or simply close. The marine service industry will contract dramatically. Mechanics skilled in gasoline engine repair will find their expertise increasingly obsolete. Some will retrain for electric systems, but far fewer electric mechanics will be needed than gasoline mechanics because there's so much less to service. Part suppliers focused on gasoline engine components will see their markets evaporate. Whole categories of products, spark plugs, carburetors, fuel filters, lower unit oil will become obsolete for marine use. New opportunities will emerge for some. Companies making batteries, electric motors, charging infrastructure, and electric-specific accessories will grow. Businesses that can successfully pivot to supporting electric boaters rather than servicing gasoline engines might thrive. But overall, the marine industry will be smaller and employ fewer people because electric boats simply don't require the army of mechanics and parts specialists that gasoline boats do. For boat owners and prospective buyers, the transition creates interesting dynamics. Buying a gasoline boat today means buying into a depreciating technology. Resale values for gasoline boats will likely suffer as electric becomes mainstream and buyers increasingly prefer the maintenance-free option. But electric boats also face resale uncertainty because the technology is evolving rapidly, and early adopters might find their boats obsolete as newer, better electric systems become available. The safe bet for someone buying today might be to wait a few more years until electric technology stabilizes and the infrastructure is fully developed, or to buy a gasoline boat with the understanding that it's not an investment, but a depreciating asset that will have limited resale value. The worst decision might be to buy an expensive gasoline boat expecting it to hold value, because that's increasingly unlikely as the market shifts. The revolution is real. The silent departure captured in that viral video wasn't just a novelty. It was proof that a century of gasoline dominance in recreational boating is ending. The technology exists. The public wants it. The transition is beginning. And the marine industry's 100-year business model, built on maintenance and service, is being destroyed by motors that don't need maintenance or service. For dealers panicking about their survival, the panic is justified. They built businesses around selling ongoing service, and electric outboards eliminate that service. Some will adapt, many won't. The shakeout is coming, and when it's over, the marine industry will look completely different from what it's been for the past 100 years. That's what that silent electric outboard represents. Not just a better product, but the end of an era, and the beginning of something fundamentally different. The gasoline empire that ruled the water for a century is dying, and while nobody knows exactly how long the transition will take, the direction is clear and irreversible. The question isn't whether electric will take over, it's how fast and who survives the transition.